Members' motion with no legislative effect. The Honorable Johnny NG move a motion on combating cyber fraud crimes on all fronts. 7 members will move amendments to the motion. This council will proceed to a joint debate on the motion and amendments. Later, I'll first call upon Dr. Johnny NG to speak and move the motion. Then I will call upon Dr. Wai-kwok Professional William WONG, the Honorable Duncan, the Honorable Adrian, Mr. San-keung, Mr. San-keung, and Dr. Hoey Simony to speak in sequence, but may not move the amendments at this stage. The joint debate now begins. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button. And I'll call upon Dr. Johnny NG to speak and move the motion. President, I move that the motion as printed on the agenda be passed. Now, cyber fraud crimes are becoming very rampant. Phishing, romance, and also investment scams are so common. Recently, it was found that even sale of dog meat is a scam. So, although the government has taken various enforcement actions and prevention measures to publicize and combat fraud crimes, the number of such cases are rising. According to the police, now in the first half of this year, we have seen a 47% increase of such crimes, over 50,000. Last year, it was 1 every 20 minutes. For the first half of this year, is 1 case per 14 minutes. So the situation is really very bad, affecting the welfare of the community. Victims suffer great financial losses and they are subject to mental stress. Recently, there was a series of fraud involving cryptocurrency trading platforms. Hundreds of billions of dollars were lost. At first, I received a request for help from a few dozens of victims. Now is over a few hundred. Some have lost all their lifelong savings, affecting the whole family. Some are subject to great mental distress. Some dare not tell their family members. They suffer alone in parks, and some even wanted to take their lives. So the government should take measures to seek redress for victims. There is an alliance against frauds set up in the community. However, we cannot just rely on civil forces. We must together do more to combat cyber fraud crimes on all fronts, and that's why I move this motion. Hopefully, we can pull our wisdoms together so that the government can step up efforts to protect members of the public. I have some thinking to share with you. First, the government should improve the current legislation for combating cyber fraud crimes. In other parts of the world, they have such legislation starting from the 1st of October last year. The PLC has gotten a piece of legislation to combat such crimes, to delineate clearly the liabilities. The State Council is responsible to set up a mechanism for combating telecom scams, and different ranks and levels of government all have to do their part, and individuals and organizations cannot sell personal data. There must be better protection of personal data to set up a protection mechanism. It's not easy to detect such crimes. So apart from prevention and tackling, there are also relief measures, including some of fund to help victims who suffer financial losses. In last July, the Singapore government passed a law on this in this area. They have introduced legislative measures to lower the threshold for seeking legal redress in such crimes. I think we should follow the practice of Singapore. Secondly, the government should take the lead to set up an cross-sectoral coordination system to put together the financial sector, telecommunications, internet, and technology industries so that we can adopt technology to intercept such crimes at source. As early back as in 2020, Singapore has already set up a high-level committee for this purpose to crack down cyber crimes. Although the Hong Kong police and also the government has got dedicated platforms and measures to enhance its cross-departmental and sectoral mechanism. We should do more in order to intercept such crimes at source. Secondly, we must lower the opportunity for such fraudsters to gain from such scams. We should freeze their assets. We should step up enforcement, and we should enlist the help of financial services company. We can use big data and blockchain, etc. Now, in 7 provinces in the country, they have already recovered over $10 billion of lost in such crimes. In Malaysia, they have cooperation with the financial service sector. They have anti-deception websites, and they will also help enforcement agencies to take these scammers to court. And there were also fake advertisements. For instance, East Travel found many fake websites on browse engines. In fact, it's very easy for these fraudsters to put up fake advertisements. They even use celebrities to attract victims. So there must be guidelines for regulation of advertisements on social media platforms and e-commerce platforms. They should have the duty to remove fake and fraudulent web pages. As technology advances, the modus operandi will also change frequently. People can easily fall victim to such scams because they have limited knowledge. For instance, digital transactions or digital commerce. The government should step up publicity and education to let the public understand the risk associated with trading in such products. The government should deploy more resources and mobilize forces in district organizations. We should target at easy targets and groups of such fraudsters. There can be regular talks and exhibitions at civic community centers, and we can also have programs on TV on cyber fraud, and to enhance people's awareness and ability to guard against such scams. We cannot just rely on the police. There should be a cross-sectoral and interdepartmental efforts. This is going to be a sustained war. In response to a question I put to the CE in a Q&A session, I say these fraudsters are like the devil, and the government must stand on the same front as victims, enhance people's awareness. So the CE, I was removed by the CE's position and remarks. I believe the SL government can do more in cracking down on cyber fraud crimes so that we can have an anti-fraud firewall to guard against cyber fraud. And I'll propose the question to you, and that is the motion by Dr. Johnny NG be passed.
President, first I want to thank Dr. Johnny NG and other colleagues' amendments. President, technology is moving very fast, and as social media, AI, big data is being promoted, the general public are enjoying a lot of conveniences such as instant messaging, flow of information, paperless payment, but that also brings about a lot of new problems. There are different types of fraud, attacks, cyber attacks, and cybercrime. So these new modes of criminality are increasing, and we also see industrialization of crime. And it covers a wide range of activities and areas. And recently, a well-known tourist company, their Facebook website had been forged. Unsuspecting citizens made bookings. They booked flights and hotels. They all not only lost money, that their holidays were ruined. So targeting cybercrime is of utmost importance. The police have implemented different services and apps to help detect fraud, and we also have the anti-fraud unit, anti-money laundering unit. The police also worked with the banks to stop these crimes, but the criminals' techniques are changing, ever changing. And then, for example, they deploy AI, they use synthesized voices to commit cybercrime. So it's easy to fall prey and to fall victim to these types of crime. So we urge the SAR government to streamline its efforts. We need to have cross-industry cooperation. We need to deploy high tech to target crime at its source. We need to protect privacy. We need to have cross-border cooperation. We need to educate the public against cybercrime. So I, with my colleagues, wish to put forward some amendments. But on streamlining our arrangements, I pointed out that the government should have anti-spam, we should have anti-cold calling legislation. In 2017, when it took effect, the tele office, they have 3 unwanted message, including fax, SMS, and recorded voice messages. But the public need to register their phone number to reject these electronic messages. The government in 2018 had also legislated a registration list for rejecting calls, and up till now we don't have a legislative timetable in this area. But now we see more and more phone fraud, so the society is now questioning whether we should put legislation on schedule. Now I think we agree that stopping crime at its source is important, and one important aspect is to strengthen our cybersecurity. So that is something that I wish to emphasize. Recently, we've had institutional attacks. We've seen attacks on cyber attacks on our public institutions. A lot of information has been stolen, has been encrypted. When hackers cannot achieve, when their ransom is not met, they will leak the data, and that comprises a cybersecurity leak. And the current government is trying to speed up the pace of digitization. We want to have an intelligent city, and we want to have different electronic services, electronic platform. So while we need infrastructure, we also need to assess cybersecurity. We have to strengthen private, public electronic services. We also need to strengthen our efforts on repairing cyber attacks. Your time's up, Mr. William Wong. Thank you, President. Cyber fraud is one of the biggest headaches amongst law enforcement. Now, their techniques are diverse. Fraudsters make it very difficult for the public to defend, and a lot of fraud cases are conducted cross-border, so detection is very difficult. And third, the number of fraud cases are going up, and it's becoming harder and harder to stop. So the government's response to my written question regarding the figures of fraud in the last 3 years has been increasing. From 10,000 cases, it's now some 20,000 cases in 2020. As a matter of fact, The police have been targeting cyber fraud. For example, they set up an anti-fraud coordination unit. They have a anti-fraud server, but the number of cyber fraud cases are going up. Now, Dr. Johnny Ng suggested setting up a cross-agency unit to deploy high-tech. He also wants to strengthen anti-fraud education. Now, aside from that, I suggest the government should also consider legislation. We should regulate social media. For example, in Singapore, they have a cyber security law where the government can require the social media platform to ban accounts of fraudulent, to ban fraudulent accounts. They can require certain apps to be seized and removed, but Hong Kong doesn't have this legislation. Even if we have a suspected case, we cannot stop it in time. In the last few days, Hownek's virtual currency was an example. In September this year, SFC received a complaint against Hownex, but these unlicensed platforms are not regulated. We cannot shut them down. So from September till now, it's been some 2 months, and we don't know how many unknowing members of the public have fallen prey and suffered a loss. So that reminds us that even when we find a suspected case, there is no legislation that we can apply to stop these websites from operating. Another issue is social media in preventing fraud. What role should they play? According to the police requirement, social media platforms, when they remove posts and fake sites, these users will continue to receive friend suggestions, and we also have celebrity investment articles. So these are very suspicious, but they occur very frequently. So is enough effort being expended to prevent these kinds of fraud from occurring? So for victims of cybercrime, the UK Parliament had recently passed legislation requiring social media platforms and search engines to conduct illegal activity review. They also are required to make annual reports. They also require the largest service providers to ban suspected commercials, fraudulent commercials. So when a fraudulent commercial is detected, they have to be removed immediately. So I hope the government can look into legislation feasibility and target cyber fraud. So that would conclude my speech, and I hope you can support my amendment. Mr. Duncan Chiu, with the internet has improved our lifestyle. It brings about a lot of job opportunities, but unfortunately at the same time, criminals will use the cyber world for illegal activities. We already received more than 20,000 complaints. We have commercial fraud, job-seeking fraud, social media fraud, email fraud, mobile banking fraud, and the losses have exceeded 4.4 billion. It's not just limited to Hong Kong. Everywhere in the world is a victim to cyber fraud. So I thank Mr. Johnny Ng's motion for targeting cyber fraud, because cyber fraud is getting out of hand. The proposal is to adopt a multi-pronged approach. We need to target cyber fraud at source. And we have also 6 amendments that I will support. For example, Mr. William Wong suggested just now that the government should look into legislation. There should be removal of fraudulent commercials and so on. Just now, Mr. Wong also mentioned that European countries have legislated already. They require social media to remove suspicious content. Whereas in Hong Kong, people make complaints, and when a complaint is established, then it is only removed. I think a lot of people have received fraudulent phone calls. They will ask the victims to guess who they are, or they might impersonate government officials. So from 2020, we had 1,900 cases, and by 2022, we had 2,831 cases. So losses went from 500 million to 700 million plus. And as of this year, we've had cases involving some 700 million, and impersonating officers involved 690 cases. So our losses in last year, we had 1,290 cases and involving 900 million. So in the short term, phone fraud, we can work with the phone service providers. We need to target phone calls that have the phone number +852. We have received more than 13 million text messages reminding public of overseas calls, the dangers of overseas calls. They might be fraudulent calls. So when a phone number is reported, the phone service operator should be able to ban that account. That would help in targeting fraud. And in the past, I've also suggested that we need to work with phone service providers to change the numbering. Phone numbers that start with 1 will signify government phone calls. That can help us. It can help us identify legitimate calls. It can reduce the number of impersonating calls, and we now a lot of people will reject calls starting with phone numbers starting with the number 3, and they have rejected calls from hospitals. So I suggest the government consider my proposal using phone numbers that start with 1. The criminals also like to follow the latest trends. We need to follow the latest trends. For example, we've heard that they use concert tickets, fake tickets, tour agency websites to lure victims. So these methods involve small amounts, and sometimes they are cross-border, and it's hard to detect. So during our news announcements, maybe we can spend 1 or 2 minutes to display the latest fraud modus operandi, so as if the public are made aware, then they can minimize falling victim to phone fraud. And President, that would conclude my speech, and I support all the amendments.
Mr. Adrian Ho, I thank Dr. Johnny NG for sponsoring the motion. Now, once hackers find their way into a company's website, and they may intimidate and extort money out of the company because they have got personal data of customers. And some may meet scammers on social media, and we have the impression that there are a certain amount of cryptocurrency trading platform involving frauds. So they come in different scale and nature. To curb the increase in cybercrimes, we must enhance security and enforcement. It is an inevitable trend that there will be digitalization. For SMEs, they may focus on development of e-commerce to boost revenue. They may have to use that to cover the cost to ensure cybersecurity. Now, if they encounter hackers, then the outcome can be disastrous. So we should enhance the protection of SMEs. Now, in the PA, there is a bud fund, and under that, there will be e-commerce easy. $1 billion will be spent to sponsor SMEs for developing e-commerce. I think we should set aside money to help them to enhance cybersecurity, and the best is by providing subsidies. SMEs can use such resources for enhancing their cybersecurity so that their business can grow together with cybersecurity level and to enhance the knowledge of their employees. Now, if you come across fraudsters, now they come in all forms and through different channels, and they can even use instant messenger software, and more people are using virtual banking and FPS. Different kinds of e-payment has directly or indirectly make it easier for fraudsters to collect money. They can operate a fake group buying websites or online shopping platforms. They just close down after they have cheated you of money, and then it's difficult to trace them. Victims may just give up. And enforcement agencies have been very limited in the enforcement action against cyber fraud crimes. And so such crimes are of low cost and high return. And very often when you shop online, you have to pay upfront. Theoretically speaking, customers know the banking details of these fraudsters, but according to victims, even if they have reported cases to the police, it was very difficult to establish the case. And the real name registration system of SIM cards has been in place for a year, and virtual banks will require a phone number for setting up a new account. With so much information, why is it so difficult for law enforcement agencies to investigate these cases? I think the public would also like to know the reasons for that. The Hong Kong police and the banking sector, and also the Hong Kong MA has set up the ADCC, the Anti-Deception Coordination Center. It was recently opened. I think we should enhance collaboration so that we can have professional monitoring and also interrupt fake information so we can crack down on such crimes. Thank you. The Honorable Chen Kim-po, thank you. Well, cyber fraud has become increasingly rampant. For the first time of this year, we have got 30,000 such cases, up 5% compared with the same period last year. The government must take a bold action to crack down on such crimes so that Hong Kong's reputation will not be tarnished. The motion by Dr. Johnny NG is timely to allow us an opportunity to discuss this matter. I urge the administration to take reference from overseas experience based on our actual situation, take action to combat cyber fraud crimes. I urge the research division of our secretariat to conduct a research on what Singapore has done in cracking down on cyber fraud crimes. I think there are two areas we should address. First, the masterminds are hard to reach. Most of the scam phone calls came from overseas. It is difficult for the police to trace them, and therefore we must intercept such calls at source. Secondly, our law lacks teeth. The Hong Kong Consumer Council and also the police were aware of the operation of fraud webpage, but the police could not take any action. Now, the UK and Singapore have ways to crack down on such crimes. We have taken measures to crack down on scam phone calls. We have got over 1.9 searches. But then for this server, members of the public have to take the initiative to search for such phone numbers. It's difficult for the elderly to act. The Singapore has got a mobile app. So you just install such an app on your mobile phone. The police will automatically match the incoming call with the database of suspicious phone calls, and the filter function is very successful. If we can introduce a similar app, then the elderly can choose to filter all suspicious phone calls. Singapore and the UK have completed legislation to crack down on cyber fraud crimes. The UK passed Cyber Security Act. Social media and film search engines and websites have to be liable. There can be advertisements impersonating celebrities. Now, once they are found, the operator of websites are required to remove them. Otherwise, they will be subject to a fine at $1.9 million. We have many similar scams. People impersonating as celebrities, even though the celebrities complained to the enforcement agencies, action was too slow. So we should follow the practice of Singapore. Singapore has just passed a law on cyber fraud crimes, but the government suspects that there is cyber fraud involving a certain website. It can be locked or closed down at once. The government should be allowed to stop the operation of such websites to contain the financial loss of victims so as to serve a deterrent effect. I understand that people may worry that such a piece of legislation may affect our business environment and also the freedom of information. However, Singapore has succeeded in operating such a law, and if we do not take action, then there will be more victims falling prey to such crimes. If we do not intercept such bad things at once, then it will be disastrous. There is a lot of things to learn from Singapore. It's just I don't have enough time. I urge the Secretary to complete this study as soon as possible. With these remarks, I support the motion. Mr. Lam San-keung, I really appreciate the police efforts in cracking down on cyber fraud. However, the number of cases has still been rising. It goes to show that the enforcement action is limited in effect because many such scams originate from overseas, and so the whole communities must work together to crack down on such crimes. We should join forces with the financial sector and the telecommunications sector. We have to educate the public not to fall prey to such scams, and we must also trace those criminals, and we should also crack down on fake phone bank accounts of these scammers. Now they always have to use a stooge account to collect the money. So we urge banks to take swift action to crack down on such accounts. I've written to the administration time and again whether they have checked the banks where stooge accounts are most common. Then the police should take action, and we know what banks should improve their bank opening procedures. Perhaps some of the banks have overlooked documents, or some banks are too lax in opening accounts. I praise the Security Bureau for their response with this. This is a good example of a beneficial interaction between the government and the legislature. However, the response from the Security Bureau was the government has not kept statistics on the amount of financial loss and also banks involved in such crimes. It is said that banks are able to intercept unusual transactions, but so far we have seen 25,000 cases in this year. According to the police, from 2017 to July this year, it's been 6 years. Scams uncovered by bank staff was only 460 cases. So there is a big loophole to be plugged. We must crack down on stooge bank accounts. I think there are loopholes in our account opening mechanism for genuine members of the public, innocent members of the public. It's so difficult to open bank accounts, not so for fraudsters. Myself have done some research first. People will buy stooge accounts on the internet, and some will sell stooge accounts and they will apply for bank accounts very quickly, and these banks will pay no regard to the number of accounts being held by an individual. It is easier for housewives and students to set up bank accounts, and some criminals have abused this loophole to buy stooge accounts from these people. I urge the administration to gather information and intelligence and step up the exchange of intelligence with different organizations to crack down on stooge banking accounts. We must review the current mechanism for opening bank accounts and to plug any loophole that exists. We must also enhance enforcement against stooge accounts and enhance the penalty. If the government thinks that it hasn't got enough legislative tool to crack down on cybercrimes, it should amend the legislation as soon as possible in order to safeguard the properties and interests of members of the public. Thank you.
Dr. Hoey Simon Lee. Thank you, Deputy President. Well, we live in an era of rapid technological advancements. And with that, cybercrime is getting ever more rampant. It poses a major challenge to our society. We need to fully understand how criminals are bettering themselves in using different online channels such as instant messaging, social media platforms, and cryptocurrency platforms to conduct their crime, such that crimes of fraud are becoming more cross-boundary in nature. Against this backdrop, we need the government to collaborate with different sectors so that more effective measures can be put in place under the multi-pronged approach. My amendment involves some suggestions on stepping up law enforcement. We need to set up an interdepartmental cross-sectoral collaboration mechanism. This is of utmost importance. That means we need to join the forces of the financial services industry, telecommunications, technology sectors, as well as government departments, so that through state-of-the-art technology, we can stop cybercrime at its source. In order to achieve this objective, we need active participation from all sides. In order to meet this goal, we also need to make sure that all parties will fulfill their obligations. For example, telecommunications service providers should enhance their capability in identifying and intercepting suspicious text and phone messages. For banks, before large value fund transfers, warnings should be issued to high-risk users. We also need to understand the nature of such crime. Such crime usually happens outside Hong Kong. In order to intercept this crime at source, the Hong Kong government should collaborate with law enforcement agencies from around the world so that a joint law enforcement mechanism can be established. And then we can forge a global force to combat online frauds and make an all-out effort to go after the masterminds of cyber fraud crimes and to freeze their criminal proceeds and assets in order to achieve deterrence. That means we need international cooperation among law enforcement agencies. Apart from law enforcement, I want to talk about another issue. That is, it is also important to step up anti-fraud education. We need to take a targeted approach in our publicity efforts, especially the more vulnerable groups such as the elderly, as well as mainland students studying in Hong Kong. They may not have a lot of experience in browsing the net, and these are vulnerable victims. We need to step up our anti-fraud education efforts. We also need to enlist the help of community organizations and NGOs to disseminate the relevant anti-fraud messages. I thank Dr. Johnny Ng's original motion. And I want to add to his words, and that is why in my amendment I've made two suggestions. First, I urge the parties to fulfill their responsibilities and obligations. I also urge for a joint lawful enforcement mechanism to be established so as to intercept the crime at source. Through joint effort among different government departments, we can build an anti-fraud firewall to guard against cyber fraud, so that with a joint effort we can build a safer cyberspace for all. Secretary for Security. President, I thank Dr. Johnny Ng for his motion and amendments from 7 members, so as to allow members to give their views and suggestions on this important topic of combating cyber fraud crimes on all fronts. Fraud is a global issue and something that the government is very concerned about. Government departments have been adopting a multi-pronged approach in combating fraud on all fronts through strengthened law enforcement, publicity and education, multi-agency collaboration, intelligence analysis, as well as cross-boundary cooperation. On law enforcement, the police has been ramping up its efforts. In the first 10 months of this year, a total of 4,729 people were arrested for various deception cases, up by 50% comparing to the same period last year. Recently, the police successfully applied to the court for a heavier sentence in a case involving laundering fraudulent payments with a stooge account, thereby stepping up deterrence against renting, lending, or selling bank accounts. The police also collaborates with mainland law enforcement agencies to exchange intelligence and combat cross-boundary fraud syndicates. To effectively tackle fraud, it is essential that we collaborate with stakeholders such as telecommunications service providers, banks, and relevant regulators. The police set up a dedicated working group with the Office of Communications Authority and telecommunications service providers last year. So far, a number of measures have been launched, including interception of websites and phone numbers suspected to be involved in fraud cases on our request. For incoming fraudulent calls from outside Hong Kong, telecommunications service providers have started to send voice or text alerts to remind users to stay vigilant against non-local calls with the +852 prefix. For syndicates deploying technology to make a deluge of fraudulent calls, mobile service providers should follow the code of practice and suspend the service for the phone numbers once they are identified as suspicious callers. As at the end of October, around 400,000 local phone numbers have been suspended. The Real Name Registration Program for SIM cards, or RNR program, was launched in February this year. Since then, telecommunications service providers have been conducting sample checks from time to time and follow up on the verification of suspicious cards. As at the end of October, over 1.3 million SIM cards have been cancelled, or the registration of which have been rejected by the service providers. Acting on information from the service providers, the police have also arrested persons suspected of registering a large quantity of SIM cards with a false identity. On collaboration with the financial sector, the police, together with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the banking industry, jointly rolled out a number of anti-deception measures. They include the upstream scam intervention mechanism launched in May, which proactively proactively identifies victims of fraud. So far, the mechanism has successfully stopped 320 people from transferring money to fraudsters. The Financial Intelligence Evaluation Sharing Tool, or FINEST, was launched in June. Last Sunday, on the 26th of November, the suspicious indicator alert mechanism was launched. Under the mechanism, the police's scam meter is connected to the fast payment system platform. An alert message will be sent to anyone intending to make an online payment transfer to a suspicious account through FPS to remind the public to stay vigilant. Last week, on the 24th of November, the police and major banks set up an anti-deception alliance. Banks will assign their staff to work alongside the police in the Anti-Deception Coordination Center, or ADCC, to provide real-time assistance in addressing fraudulent activities. On the protection of personal data, the Privacy Commissioner has launched a series of anti-deception publicity and education campaigns, such as the setting up of a fraud prevention hotline to handle public inquiries or complaints of suspected personal data fraud. A dedicated website and publicity clips are also prepared to provide tips on safeguarding personal data privacy. The Commissioner, together with 11 data protection authorities around the world, issued a joint statement on global privacy expectations and principles on social media platforms to remind the operators of their responsibility of protecting personal data from illegal appropriation. On the technical front, the Hong Kong Internet Registration Corporation Limited launched a free .hk domain security scan service in 2019. It further piloted a new website security scan service called Healthy Web in 2023 to alert users of potential cybersecurity risks in advance. On software support, the police and Hong Kong University jointly developed and launched a free software called Vanguard to help SMEs identify suspicious emails in a bid to ward off phishing. The software was developed in 2022. Of course, the first line of defense in deception prevention is public awareness. On publicity and education, the police will continue to publicize the anti-scam helpline 18222 of the ADCC, as well as the Scam Meter website and the Scam Meter app. The police will also explain the latest modus operandi of fraudsters through different channels and the thematic anti-deception activities to publicize the messages. President, the Undersecretary for Financial Services in the Treasury, and myself will listen to members' views carefully before responding to them again at the end. Thank you. Mr. Martin Liao. President, according to the Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau of the Police, in the first 9 months, 29,000 plus cases of fraud were recorded, involving a sum of $4.9 billion. The caseload exceeded the 27,000 plus last year, and that represents an increase of 58% comparing to the 14,000 plus cases recorded last year. Most of the cybercrime involves online fraud, and we are concerned. Now, cyber fraud happens more frequently. Now, there is one case of cyber fraud in every 14 minutes. Many renowned companies and organizations have fallen victim of the crime. The situation has now spread to cryptocurrency platforms. In order to combat cyber fraud crimes on all fronts, we need to build a robust environment in order to promote the development of a smart city and ensuring the interests of enterprises. I support a series of measures such as the website, the search engine, Scam Meter, as well as the FPS suspicious proxy ID alert. I also welcome the bill to be tabled next year to tackle cyber fraud. As for the more vulnerable groups with little resources, such as SMEs, I think we should provide more support. The swindlers would deploy different tactics, but at the end of the day, they either extort money out of the victims or practice fraud after stealing their identities. For SMEs with limited resources, they have relatively less input in preventing cybercrime, and they are the vulnerable groups. According to the Cisco's report, 43% of SMEs in the past year fell victims of phishing attacks. 39% of SMEs incurred losses of up to $500,000 because of cyber attacks. Some of the SMEs even incurred losses of up to $1 million. According to this year's statistics, in terms of cybersecurity preparedness, our index is only 47, so we are not prepared. Through years of efforts, we have been helping SMEs, such as the technology voucher scheme. SMEs have now established a firewall to guard against cyber crime that is comparable to the firewall of larger corporations. However, SMEs have this misconception that the firewall doesn't require maintenance. Again, with limited resources, SMEs are unable to hire technology experts and draw up guidelines for compliance by their staff. And this is a far cry from the resources put in by larger corporations in this regard. I think there should be a ramped-up effort to provide that targeted support for the SMEs, such as step-up training on cybersecurity, especially on the latest modus operandi of cyber fraud using AI and other technologies. Cybersecurity experts should be engaged to help SMEs test their systems and to help improve maintenance. Next year, the cybersecurity law will be enacted. We can make reference to the law in Macau. We should not just enact legislation to protect personal data. I support this motion as well as 7 other amendments. Mr. Chan Hock-Fung. In the past, Hong Kong films usually centered around the theme of robberies. We had some mainland robbers coming with arms and ammunitions, but now the fraudsters would just make a phone call and in a blink of an eye, $10 million would be gone. Now, the modus operandi are very different nowadays. So the crux of the matter is whether we can catch up with the changing MO of the criminals. This is a problem faced by many other countries, such as the UK and Singapore. They have amended their legislation to target cyber crime. For phone scams and the online frauds, the situation is deteriorating. It's like a virus or mutation. From Guess Who I Am to naked chat to online dating, investment scams, as well as cryptocurrencies nowadays. So nowadays, it's a question of whether we have a timetable to enact legislation or amend the existing legislation to plug the loopholes and combat cyber crime. The other point is, after enacting legislation, we need to ensure that there are sufficient hands to enforce them. In the past, law enforcement officers may not be familiar with law enforcement against cyber crimes. Do we have sufficient training? Do we have sufficient resources? Secretary, do speak out if you need more resources. When it comes to cyber crime, we need to set up a dedicated law enforcement unit. The other important point is that there should be oversight of the platforms. Very often, the platforms are operating outside Hong Kong. Recently, travel agent running a page on a social media platform got copied by fraudsters despite having the blue tick as a certified page. Other fraudsters continued to impersonate this travel agent. It is important, therefore, to take a multi-pronged approach. The other point is that we should enhance public education. The public were ignorant in the past. Now, more should be done to educate the public. The government has made a lot of efforts in, say, developing apps such as a Scam Meter Plus and publicizing the messages. But only those with a discerning eye would pay attention to these advertisements. Can we do something like the District Council ordinary election publicity? Make sure that you have extensive territory-wide publicity campaigns so that everyone knows that cyber fraud is something very serious. And if you come across such a crime, you should call anti-scam hotline 18222. So in terms of combating cyber fraud crimes, I think that we are only making a start. It's high time that all government departments took a more serious stance, because cyber crimes would become the major type of crime. This will incur huge losses for the public. So the government should be very serious about it. I support all the motions and amendments.
Mr. Kenneth Lam. As social media becomes popular and we now have fraud occurring 24/7, the public can fall victim to fraud very easily. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to discuss how to deal with cyber fraud. When the police reported crime last year, there were some 28,000 cases of cyber fraud, making up 40% of crime, and it's on an upward trend. As a matter of fact, we now have 70% of mobile phone fraud, shopping fraud, investment fraud, instant messaging fraud, impersonating relatives or government officials. Now, according to the Security Bureau response, in the first 9 months of the year, we had instant messaging fraud losses totaling 28 million. Now, this type of fraud relies on search engine commercials. They have fake links and a hacking of account. So using fake websites, this is very prevalent. The Tourism Commission indicated that we have fake tour agencies, and real agencies were being impersonated. So it's very obvious that the search engine companies are receiving money, but are not regulating the industry. They allow criminals to act on their platforms. So I urge the government to step up the regulation of service operators, especially when there is clear evidence that victims fell prey, and then these the service providers need to bear responsibility as well. President, we have fraud ranging from small amounts to large amounts, and we've had severe cases amounting to $1 billion. So that affects Hong Kong's reputation as a financial center. I received a complaint where a victim joined a WhatsApp investment group, and they claimed to have celebrities, experts, and there were news videos, and that instilled confidence in the victim. The victims were urged or encouraged to download links, and when they realized that it was fraudulent, they would have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So all the investments are fake, but very unfortunately, we cannot recover these economic losses. President, the schemes have not been stopped over the years, so we need to come up with more solutions. We need, when we make remittances, there should be warnings. We also need to implement police anti-fraud apps. We need to provide advance warning to suspicious transactions. We also need to highlight suspicious phone numbers. And we need to remind the public that they need to be alert. Now, not too long ago, some analysis indicated that the majority of victims are not the elderly. They are those born after the 80s and 90s, because they use social media. They believe they are susceptible to these fake commercials. So we need to target the young, because they do online shopping, they make friends online. So we need specific education targeting these groups. We have to teach them financial management so that they don't become victims of fraud, so they don't assist the fraudulent activities. So that concludes my speech. I support the motion. Mr. Shang Hoilong, I support the motion. I am a shareholder in a tech company. We've had a lot of phone fraud. They use WhatsApp, Instagram to conduct fraud. And every day in the news, we see a lot of these cases. And I won't repeat myself. And the most notorious cases are Honex and JPEX. A lot of celebrities, highly educated victims. So aside from investment fraud, we also have impersonating fraud. The post office has a piece of mail for you and so on. And we've also had a complaint. New immigrants to Hong Kong, they received a fraudulent call, and they had lost a six-figure sum. So new immigrants are also victims to fraud because they're unfamiliar with Hong Kong. They might be susceptible to people impersonating as government officials. So when we educate the public, we also need to target the new immigrants in the professional scheme, the talent scheme. I'm also considering having an online and offline seminar for new immigrants. So Hong Kong is not safe. There are a lot of there's free capital flow in and out of Hong Kong. So criminal organizations, they will use deepfake to commit fraud. So we see that telecommunication fraud, it's becoming an organized activity. So we do need to commend the Hong Kong police. As we heard the Secretary for Security highlight the measures the police have undertaken. They've worked with telecom operators. We've been able to intercept 4,800 suspicious calls and suspicious text messages. We have also seen that the Hong Kong MA have also been able to provide law enforcement support. So we need to be aware that fraud, cyber fraud, why it's so prevalent is because it's different from traditional fraud. Cyber fraud can occur very quickly. It is hard to detect. It's a big challenge. So in order to accurately target cyber fraud, I suggest that the government take a three-pronged approach. There's legislation, technical reform, and regarding legislation, we need to have cyber fraud legislation in the mainland. Starting from last year, they have cyber fraud laws, and the State Council had set up a group to deal with cyber fraud, and the different levels of provincial governments need to conduct education. So individuals and provincial governments cannot interact or sell information to these criminal organizations. So Hong Kong should make reference to that, and we can target it at source. Second, at the technical level, the public fall victim because they are being deceived by AI, blockchain technologies. So we need to have a database. We need to be able to use blockchain efficiently. We need to build sandboxes to prevent fraud from occurring. And third, we need anti-fraud personnel. Recently, the talent scheme attracted a lot of AI blockchain experts. So I hope the government can build up a expert team to help us target cyber fraud. In 2018, I had organized an AI curriculum, and we had a few thousand teachers and 100,000 students. So they have been able to learn from this curriculum, and we hope that we can enhance their awareness. So I support the original motion and amendment. Mr. Chan Zhanying. So internet banking, payment systems have developed very rapidly. Criminals can only need a notebook computer, and they can defraud a number of people. It's low cost and highly rewarding. So that's why we have a large number of fraud cases. The losses are astronomical. It is a blight on Hong Kong and to the rest of the world. So I thank Dr. Johnny Ng for proposing the motion. Cyber fraud methodologies are varied and various. So, but regardless of what they do, the ultimate purpose is to defraud victims of their savings. So I'm aware that my banking colleagues, in their mobile banking apps, it is replacing websites, because using the mobile needs multi-step verifications such as facial recognition, fingerprint recognition, and a lot of web banking sites don't allow video recording or screen captures, and I think that can enhance security. So using mobile app has its benefits. We can allow the freezing of credit cards done via the mobile phone. Now I see that HKMA has put forward a lot of anti-fraud measures. It targets money laundering, according to the police. So when the banks introduced these measures, they were able to identify dummy accounts and identify victims. So just now we heard colleagues describe that. Police were able to stop 200 payments, and that minimized losses. So I believe we need to rely on the police and banks to share information, to conduct real-time investigation, to protect the public. When anybody is deceived, we can minimize their losses. But when a victim realizes they are a victim to a scam, the money is already transferred. They've already disappeared. the scammers have disappeared. The crime detection is very challenging, and it's hard to recover the losses. So for cyber fraud, prevention is much more important than recovering your losses. So the largest loss is in investment fraud. We've heard about that just now. Investors and the Investor Education Council, they should work with the police to help educate the public, to enhance the public's awareness. We should also enhance the police server capabilities. So when users visit suspicious sites or when they receive suspicious calls, they can be alerted. So that can help deter fraud. On the other hand, even though internet service providers are targeting crime at source, but I still receive impersonating calls, messages, and suspicious calls. Just now, a deputy president received 2 such calls. Singapore also has these anti-fraud apps. They have different measures to prevent fraud. I hope Hong Kong can learn from Singapore and plug these loopholes. So mobile fraud, it crosses across industries, across platforms. For example, in WhatsApp, in Google, they have a role to play in cybersecurity. So the government needs to work with these critical industries, and they should also create a cooperation platform to enhance anti-fraud intelligence sharing, and we need to have cross-industry synergy and a fast response team to help us target cyber fraud. We need to have effective defense against fraud. I support the original motion and the 7 amendments. Thank you.
Mr. Sunny Tan. Thank you, Deputy President. I speak in support of Dr. Johnny Ng's motion on combating cyber fraud crimes on all fronts. According to the police, recently they have received an exponential growth in the number of complaints against telephone scams and online frauds. The amount of money involved is $4.4 billion. So the government has made a lot of efforts, as you can see in the publicity materials. The anti-scam hotline 18222 has also played a significant role. The government should do more. The cybersecurity law should be enacted as quickly as possible, following that detailed study. Now, the Law Reform Commission also conducted a study on the 5 types of cybercrimes. The government should follow up on these recommendations as quickly as possible. The government should also enhance cyber infrastructure to build a good foundation to improving cybersecurity. Second, fraudsters would make a deluge of calls and text messages so as to fish out the possible victims. We should make sure that it becomes very costly for the fraudsters to do so. For telephone scams, the government should step up collaboration with telecom operators. They should detect those who make persistent phone calls, which is suspicious. Now, for banks, when it comes to large fund transfers, multiple online purchases, etc., banks should go through the KYC procedures, that is, the Know Your Client procedures. The Hong Kong MA a few days ago launched the FPS Suspicious Proxy ID Alert. If, according to the Scam Meter database, this user is suspicious, then the high-risk user will receive an alert when payment is to be transferred. We can make reference to this arrangement and issue alerts to the prospective callers of scam calls and messages so that they can stay alert. The third point is that the modus operandi of fraudsters are constantly changing. I know that everyone receives suspicious WhatsApp messages, calls. Fraudsters will use other people's profile pictures to start new accounts. The government, the public should stay vigilant against scam calls and messages. They should also make use of the report and archive function to report these fraudsters to the relevant app developers so that their accounts can be blocked as quickly as possible. We can also use innovative technologies such as big data to prevent phishing and cyber attacks. Victims of cyber fraud crimes can come from all walks of life, apart from elderly, women, young people, large corporations as well as SMEs would also fall prey to the crimes. I am chair of the Hong Kong Productivity Council. We earlier published a report relating to SMEs. In the past 10 months, 40% of SMEs had experience of receiving scam calls and messages. We should step up our efforts in preventing cyber attacks and phishing attacks. The government should provide more incentives to encourage enterprises to apply for technology voucher scheme so that their cybersecurity can be strengthened and cybersecurity infrastructure can be strengthened as well. There should be collaboration between the Hong Kong CERT and other NGOs and as well as ADCC of the police to take an all-out approach in combating cybercrime. I support the motion. Mr. Chan Siu-Hong. Mr. President, I speak in support of Dr. Johnny Ng's motion on combating cyber fraud crimes on all fronts and the amendments moved by members. Phone scams and online scams have become ever more rampant. In light of the technological advancements, the modus operandi of fraudsters have also been changing very rapidly, such that many members of the public have fallen prey to their crimes. Now, with changes in the consumption habit, many people now turn to online shopping. For online fraud cases, the figure rose from 13,000 to 19,599 in 2022. The cases involved shopping and job scams. In the first 9 months this year, the number of fraud cases reached 21,097, exceeding the whole year figure last year. With more prevalent use of smartphones, instant messaging apps, and as well as social media platforms, we see an increase in cyber fraud crimes. In August this year, the police have changed how they kept statistics. So in the first 10 months, the number of such cases increased substantially from 168 to 1,530 cases. 1,344 of these cases involved hijacking instant messaging apps. Apart from guessing who I am, impersonating government officials, and phishing messages, there are more scams proliferating on the social media platforms. The fraudsters will impersonate lawyers, cybersecurity experts, even hackers in a bid to help victims pursue their claims. But they are impersonators. In light of the rising trend of cyber fraud crimes, I'm happy to see that the police are working with different stakeholders to step up publicity against cyber fraud, as well as adopting different interception measures. In 2022, together with OFCA and the telecommunications service providers, a working group was set up so that scam calls could be intercepted at source. For example, for the non-local incoming calls with a prefix of +852, text and voice alert messages will be sent to users. and these suspicious phone numbers would be intercepted as well. The police has also launched a Scam Meter website, which is a one-stop portal, as well as a Scam Meter Plus app. As long as you key in the mobile number, the username, or the address, or the FPS ID number, etc. This website will be linked to 15 databases managed by the Hong Kong CERT as well as other organizations to help identify suspicious accounts. However, the databases are not updated frequent enough to catch the culprits. For example, on the 15th of this month, one solicitor's firm posted an article on a social media platform. It clarified that the office address was used by a fraudster. I also once came across a web page of this law firm with branches in Singapore and Hong Kong. They make use of these of the genuine pictures of the law firms, etc. On the 20th, a report was made. Well, we need to make an all-out effort of combating cyber fraud crimes. It is imminent. We need the efforts from the government and individuals. We also need international collaboration. Apart from stepping up enforcement, monitoring, and public education, recently, banks have also launched measures to help safeguard the security of their apps. Recently, a public organization's computer system was hacked. We need to step up our effort and mobilize the community and involve the NGOs, etc., so as to raise public awareness on cyber fraud crimes. Only by doing so will we be able to put a stop to the proliferating cyber fraud crimes. Mr. Bill Tang, have you switched on the mic? I thank Dr. Johnny NG for moving this motion. Dr. Johnny NG has been assisting victims of JPEGs. I think he deserves appreciation from members of the public. Please check Mr. Bill Tang's mic first.
Wait.
Is it coming through? Better now? Sorry. I'll make a start again. Thank you, President. Dr. Johnny NG has moved this motion today. He is concerned about combating cyber fraud crimes, not only in this council. In fact, he has been making a lot of efforts in handling these cases and assisting the victims. Now, on the 1st of April, he set up an alliance. Major publicity campaign was mounted so as to raise the public awareness. I hope I'll be able to contribute to this effort as well. Now, in fact, Mr. Wai-kwok, my master, and myself also helped handle these scam cases like Ponzi schemes, London gold frauds, on which Mr. Wai-kwok had followed up on for many years. All these cases showed that many fraudsters would exploit Hong Kong as a city of free flow of information to commit crimes. It's difficult to outwit them. Now, for the money involved, for the scam money, this year we recorded a loss of $6 million. And there may be other victims who are not aware of them being cheated or who dare not speak out. In Hong Kong, what anti-deception measures do we have? We have the Scam Meter Plus app. On the mainland, there is a WeChat account members of the public can check any suspicious account on WeChat. The accuracy of this database is very high. Perhaps we can connect the two databases to benefit the public. Like Mr. Chan Xiu-hong said, he referred to a case. Perhaps using their database, we could detect the risk at once. In fact, this morning I received some more messages. At about 10:55, when the council meeting was about to begin, the +852 9870 7493 called me. The profile picture showed a pretty lady's face. She said her name is Avis. She'd like to have, she asked if I am free. She asked if I could help her enroll in one of the FTU courses. I said that you should go check up on the FTU website. And then this lady said, "Oh, you're so kind. Can I keep in touch with you?" Well, but at a glance, you will see it's +852, so it's a scammer. Nowadays, it is difficult to ensure that the information is accurate. In fact, it's like our electioneering effort. Our calls will be blocked. I think we need to tackle these crimes, or our livelihood will be affected. I also like to follow up on another issue that is about phishing texts. Now, sometimes some people may have mistakenly left behind some credit card information on fake websites, even with the one-time password information. And then they, on realizing that this is a scam, they try to call the bank's credit card center, but it could not be stopped. Can we have a one-stop method? Instead of calling the 24-hour hotline, can we just stop the credit card with just a click on the app?
Dr. Aiman Yu, President. Recently, we have seen an increase in scams, and they're using various online platforms and even phone calls. They can have fake advertisements. They can impersonate somebody else to cheat money out of members of the public. However, the police have stepped up enforcement by means of public education, publicity, and exchange of intelligence in the mainland. I have been carrying out on such cases. According to the police, the number of phone scams have been increasing. For the first 9 months of this year, over 23 cases were reported, and money lost over $4.4 billion. For cyber scam, over $7.3 million were lost over the $3 million lost last year. Now, if we take into account a loss in investment scams, the financial loss has been doubled. So victims have been dealt a blow. They suffer huge financial loss and mental stress. We're receiving lots of such scam phone calls on a daily basis. I think everyone in this chamber has received many WhatsApp messages every month. Sometimes scammers impersonate as government officials or banking staff that has undermined confidence in public bodies and confidence in general. Now, some people are not receiving phone calls because they don't know whether it is genuine or fake. So even online shopping scams are rising. DAB earlier on did a telephone poll on online shopping scam. Over 50% of the respondents had fallen victim to such cases. The products were defective or they were not of high quality. It is impossible for shoppers to see the goods before they place order. And it's also very cumbersome to seek a refund. Sometimes you cannot recover the cost, and so consumers have to accept the loss. We must enhance our regulation of e-commerce to safeguard the interests of customers. There should be enhanced enforcement and cyber patrol to protect customers. The government has been taking proactive action to enforce the law with good results. The East Kowloon region of the police launched a one-week operation. Over 200 criminals were arrested. Financial loss was $128 million. The operation showed the police commitment in cracking down on crimes and to protect the public. Their professionalism and dedication can protect the community from scams. The police has also set up a 24-hour ADCC. They have also got mobile apps and scam meters. The Hong Kong MA and Customs and Excise Department have set up a platform for exchange. They are very useful in cracking down on cyber crimes. Now, last but not least, we must all stay vigilant. We must also enhance collaboration with the mainland and international community so that these fraudsters can be all neutralized. And we should also review the bank opening accounts, and suspicious transactions should be frozen easily so that there can be follow-up action. All in all, we have to enlist the whole society in cracking down on cyber fraud crimes, and we must also enhance our vigilance. We must improve the relevant legislation to protect the properties and also privacy and data security of members of the public. Mr. Lam Sing, I speak to support the motion. Now we have got scams like JPEGs, which was very sophisticated. And even if you use the Facebook every day, you can see lots of fake web pages. For a local tour agency, from July to now, they have seen over 100 fake websites of the company. We've also seen fake web pages of bureau directors. It's very easy for them to create such fake web pages. Even if it is closed, they can open a new one. Facebook has been exploited to be a media of scam. I'd like to know whether the company has got appropriate systems and mechanism to prevent the spread of fake information online. I don't think they are, otherwise we won't have seen so many fake web pages. Very often, users are required to take the initiative to report to these operators. In fact, they should be proper gatekeepers. In many countries, they have legislation to regulate online platforms. For instance, in EU, they require these operators to patrol their own platforms and to ensure that information involving traders and dealers are correct and can be traced. In Singapore, their departments are authorized to require the removal of fake information and deceiving information from the platform, whereas in Hong Kong, victims have to request for help, or if it is identified by the police. By that time, it may be too late, and there is no guarantee that the platform concerned will follow the advice of the police, and we must enhance our work in prevention. In 2021, the country launched software to guard against fraudulent information. There will be an alert to the user for suspicious message. Now, it appears in Hong Kong we'll have to wait until next year. We can have automatic recognition of scammers. And then in the mainland, they have a hotline. It is for reporting cases and for inquiries. They will also call victims and family members of frauds, and also the vulnerable groups. And there is also 18231 using information numbers provided by public security organizations. They use big data to analyze potential users, and then they will send alert messages to these users. It is said that the accuracy rate is up to 60%. I think we can learn from their passage. The tactics deployed by fraudsters are ever-changing, and this is a never-ending race. I support the motion and also the amendments. I agree that the police, the financial services sector, and also the IT sector should work together to prevent and crack down on cyber fraud crimes. Thank you. Mr. Edward Leung. Thank you, President. I'd like to thank Dr. Johnny NG for moving this motion to allow us to carry out a debate on cyber fraud crimes. For tour agencies, trader of egg rolls, and also token platforms, cryptocurrency, etc. We've seen various scams. I think we should not just intercept these fake messages. Rather, we should tackle the problem at source. According to the police, the source is stooge bank accounts. Fraudsters use stooge bank accounts to receive the money they have received from victims, and we consider these high-risk bank accounts. They're being used to receive proceeds of crime. If these bank accounts are frequently complained against, they should be frozen at once, but that is not possible. It can only be done by a court order. So to do it well, the police and also the Hong Kong MA should take concerted efforts. For instance, if we only see deposits into a bank account, that is, victims will only deposit money into such accounts, then without any withdrawal, then there should be a reminder from the banks when FPS is used for transferring money into such an account. The user should be reminded that it is a suspicious account, and if you do so through ATM, there should also be a warning as well. And of course, the most important thing is to tackle the problem at source. Regardless of the modus operandi, you have to deceive or to collect the money from victims. I hope these measures can be put in place as soon as possible in order to prevent such crimes. I hope that can be done the earliest possible. We understand that very often cyber fraud crimes are related to phone calls. That is, you first receive a phone call and then you are lured into spending money at a particular platform. Actually, every day we receive over 10 scam phones. Very often they begin with the digit 3. For But sometimes these phone calls are useful. The call may come from a government department or a property management agency. So according to some property management agencies, during the black rainstorm warning, they called vehicle owners asking them to move their vehicles, but then such calls were ignored by some car owners. As a result, their cars were flooded. So we already have this technology. If I am a property management agency or an enterprise, I can register my phone number with the with OFTA or with the telecom operator. When I make a phone call, then my company number can be displayed on the caller's phone, and so the caller phone will know that it is an accredited body or company. So I won't be too worried to answer the phone in that case. This can help to reduce the number of scams, and sometimes these phone calls are really made in goodwill. Such a technology will help us to verify the authenticity of calls. So we are talk about monitoring steward bank accounts, and accreditation of phone numbers are just as important. Well, there is always room for improvement. I hope the administration can take the lead so that we can use technology to benefit the public instead of making them victims. Thank you.
Ms. Eunice Yung, I speak in support of Dr. Johnny Ng's motion on combating cyber fraud crimes of all fronts, and I also support all the other amendments. Now, we have seen surge in fraud crime cases through social media platforms and other means. We've seen many fraud cases, and then, of course, there's the JPEX case. Over 2,000 people reported to the police. Now, I see that the police has already substantially increased its effort in combating such crime. For example, the police spent 4 months to crack down on money laundering. They arrested 70 people, and those arrested aged between 13 and 70. So that means there are young people, even children, involved, and it's it really sounds an alarm to us. So, of course, the police needs to crack down on such crime, but how about education? How do we step up education and publicity? We don't want young people to fall foul of the law, and we don't want them to be exploited by criminals and fraudsters. The Anti-Deception Coordination Center, ADCC, has also done much. And then there's the Anti-Deception Alliance that's just been set up. This is an intelligence center, and I believe in collaboration with other organizations, we can do a better job at cracking down on fraud at source, and also we can prevent the transfer of funds. And then for victims, it will be easier for them to recover their money. And I think that's the right direction to move in. Last week, I reported to the police too, because someone used a crime syndicate used my capacity as a legislative counselor and a lawyer to deceive others further. It's like someone who's been deceived, say $500,000, and then they say, well, this is this person who's from this international law firm, and then my information is put on a Singaporean website. And then I and other lawyers, I actually discussed whether I should report a case to the Hong Kong police or Singaporean police, or should I inform the Bar Association or Law Society, or should I inform the Law Society in Singapore about such a case. So I believe that the ADA in Intelligence Center should actually do more in, they're doing a lot in intercepting funds transfer. But then, legal professionals like myself my information be used for further deception. And then they will say, well, this lawyer can help you take up the case. They can help you to recover your loss, but you need to deposit this amount of money first. And so, and then for the victims, they are actually in Taiwan, and I reported the case to the police. They wrote me Facebook messages. They said if the Hong Kong police wants to contact them, they'll be happy to provide information because they really want to recover the money they've lost. And more importantly, they want the criminals to be taken to task. Now, the website was removed a day or two after I reported case. I must commend the police for their efficiency. But then they used my information for opening line accounts and other instant messaging accounts, and these have not been dealt with yet. Now, I reported case in the middle of last month, and in recent days, I'm still receiving inquiries or complaints. They're still asking whether I'm actually the person. So that means for line accounts and other accounts, my accounts have not been suspended yet. So we want to help, combat fraud. I hope there will be better cross-border collaboration. Because, fraudsters go around the world deceiving people. They don't just target Hong Kong. So the Hong Kong police needs to do more. In particular, there's a 13-year-old child, involved in money laundering. So we need to do something. And I also think the penalties for money laundering are on the low side. Say if someone lends his account to someone for money laundering, that the person will only be imprisoned for a week or two, and so that's not strong enough deterrent effect. I hope the government and the Department of Justice will give more advice and increase the penalty. Please stop speaking, Mr. Chen, Ben Chen. Well, I'm sure every day members of the public receive phone calls, new arrivals, elderly, anyone in Hong Kong. They receive these calls every day, and there are calls from from those who claim to be from a courier company, from a certain government department and immigration department, and whatever. So, but of course, these calls will tarnish the image of law enforcement agencies, especially, say, if these calls are claimed to be from the immigration department, they will affect the image of the immigration department. But then we are seeing so many such scam calls, so we need to do something. And then, there are scam calls, and also there are calls that try to that are for marketing purpose. And, even for these marketing calls, they are not actually scams, but they are really annoying. So I hope the government will consider this do not call register. And if the phone number appears on the register, then such marketing calls should be banned. But of course, for scam calls, it doesn't matter what list you draw up, there will still be such calls. So we need to also combat that. And then the online scams are also rampant, selling crabs, shoes, air conditioners, anything. And some told us they were deceived because sometimes they offer certain discounts and so on, and to bring more customers, and then maybe words will spread, and then there will be more customers, and then when they've collected enough money, they just disappear. This happens a lot. So it doesn't matter how you keep telling people not to be greedy, there will always be some who fall victims to scams. So for this social media platform, they should have the duty to check whether certain trade offers are legitimate, and if there are any illegitimate practices or there's any illegitimate business conducted on the platform and that the platform does nothing about it, is not right. Now, because there is no legislation controlling that, and then these platforms just then take no action. So I hope the government will legislate for trade transactions done over platforms. And then for this platform, social media platform starting with the letter F, they have some 108 bogus professionals disguising as travel agents, and they offer different cheap packages. Say for a small price, you can take a helicopter ride around Hong Kong, or they claim to be a well-known travel agent. Although there have been many complaints about that social media platform starting with the letter F did not take any action. So that's why there is need to legislate for the regulation of such platforms, especially in relation to trade transactions done over the platform. Now, we often do online trading. Say we use Taobao. Taobao has this platform, and funds are transferred. But if there is any dispute, there's someone to help resolve the dispute. So that's the kind of platform that offers consumers protection. So we can't just leave it to the Customs and Excise Department to deal with some misrepresentation of trade claims. Now, it works to a certain extent, but it's not effective enough. We must still make sure social media platform will do something about trading over their platform. So there is need for legislation for that. Thank you. Mr. Connie Lam. Now, I thank Dr. Johnny Ng for moving his motion, and other members for moving their amendments. I support all of them. Now, hello, I'm from the Immigration Department. I'm sure you receive such a call almost every single day. From January to August, there were 25,000 plus scam cases. 70% are phone scams, and 30% online scams, and 14% are investment scams. And then for phone scams, that's gone up by some 73% compared to the same period last year. The police is working hard to crack down on this crime, but then we're seeing variations of scam practices. And then since last September, since the police has been working proactively with telephone communications operators and OFCA, they have suspended 1,500 registered phone numbers, and 100,000 people have had their SIM card deregistered. So we can see the police are doing something, and then they are not just cracking down on the crime, they're also trying to enhance public awareness, for example, enhancing the do not call register and so on. But then there are many advertisements now posted on social media platforms and major websites, and they are all scams. And so that means there is not enough verification of advertisements. The government needs to formulate guidelines or even legislate for regulation. Now, Macau promulgated the mainland promulgated a law on anti-telecommunication deception. They, apart from stepping up law enforcement action, individuals or organizations must not sell personal information, and there is better protection of personal information. And then on virtual assets and investment scams, while we are seeing really a serious problem. I go and visit my district every day. There are middle class citizens who approached me, and now of course JPEGs was big case, and now the latest one is Honex. And then the modus operandi is always that they will entice people to invest in cryptocurrency online, but then people are unable to recover their principals. And for JPEGs, the loss is as much as $1.6 billion. And then for financial product investment, very often prices are jacked up, and so that the people can dispose of their product. And then there are often KOLs and other well-known figures who help to publicize certain investment, and they have WhatsApp chat groups and other groups, and they say that the return is high. Some is as high as over 20%. And then people learn to believe that they could earn this high return. So we need to regulate such advertisements. And then the Securities Futures Commission, SFC does notice these platforms, but then is a toothless tiger. There are some companies labeled as unlicensed traders or platforms. Still, the SFC has no powers to stop the operation of these platforms. So I suggest enhancing the powers of SFC so it could act proactively. It could actually suspend platforms much more in advance. There are KOLs and others helping to publicize these unlicensed platforms that should be considered illegal. So we need to have more legal powers to regulate these spokespersons. We shouldn't allow them to mislead the public. Now, cracking down on such crime is not just a matter for Hong Kong. There is experience to learn from the mainland and other parts of the world. I hope that the financial bodies, telecommunications operators, and will work closer with our law enforcement agencies to prevent such scams. Thank you.
Ms. Doreen Kong, thank you. I thank Dr. Johnny NG for his motion. Scams make up a larger share of Hong Kong's crimes. This is also the scourge for many people. Since 2019, scams have risen by more than 300 times. Cyber fraud is more complicated, little evidence, harder to find the mastermind, and it often involves cross-boundary crime. That makes law enforcement harder. The detection rate is less than 20% for this kind of crime. My office received requests for help from people who are victims, seniors fall victim to scams. It's heartbreaking. One senior was defrauded tens of thousands of dollars. The senior was very sad and blamed himself and died. The government told the public time and again measures are taken to combat cyber fraud, such as stiffer enforcement and apps. Scams keep rising in number. A few days ago, another crypto platform got into trouble. This was put on the SFC's alert list. Still, many people fell prey to the platform. Monetary losses aside, I'm more worried about the impact on Hong Kong's business environment and the impact on our seniors. Business is all about trust. We need a business environment based on trust that will need a legal system to support it. This means those who are in breach of integrity should be punished. Now that we have so many scams, the government needs to rethink whether we are doing enough with our laws. Are there gaps? Now, for seniors, cyber fraud often targets seniors. These seniors don't know much about the internet. They know little about trends in crimes. A scammer posing as someone from the immigration department is enough to scare a senior. We want seniors to be able to spend their days happily. But if there are scammers around, how can we ensure seniors can spend their twilight years in peace? We must go further than updating alert lists online and just launching mobile apps. That's why I agree with Dr. Johnny NG. We need to work with telecom operators, the industry, and the government. We need to have better cooperation internationally to catch the criminals. We need to promote the knowledge about the crimes, and this issue needs to be escalated to the Chief Executive's office to give people a sense of basic security. We can learn from other places. Singapore has an act on cybercrime. There, the law enforcement agencies have the power to act. In 2005, a book came out on cybercrime. That book argues to cope with cybercrime, Hong Kong needs to stay ahead of technological changes. This book also argues training of staff is not enough to cope with technology crimes. Many years have passed. I hope our law enforcement and regulatory bodies have the manpower, such as the experts in cybercrime and cybersecurity. We need the right tools to deal with the constantly evolving cybercrime. We should not stick to the old tools and old ways to deal with the crimes of 2023. Development is compatible with regulation. We need the resolve and technology to deal with the issue. We need to stay ahead of the game instead of being led by criminals. We should be targeting the suspect instead of trying to catch a bad guy only after the event. It's too late to act only after a crime has been committed. I so submit. Mr. Wai-kwok. President, cyber fraud, phone scams, they have been rising. More than 23,000 cases this year, more than $440,000 in losses. JPEG's case saw many victims, 66 arrests, and more than $1 billion in losses. And now we have another platform, Hunex. 155 victims, involving $148 million in losses. The SFC gave us a response, but some remarks were staggering. The SFC told us Hunex is not a licensed cryptocurrency platform and it has not applied for a platform. As such, the SFC has no power to suspend the platform. This remark left a bad impression. So a platform without a license means the SFC cannot touch it. This is unacceptable. Our anti-money laundering laws say that anyone operating a platform without a license is in breach of the law. But there's a 12-month grace period. But there is a prerequisite. This platform needs to be running before June 1st this year. But as the SFC has never said whether Hunex meets this requirement. The same law also says that anyone putting out an ad, or in another provision of the same law, anyone directly or indirectly engages in fraudulent behavior is also in breach of the law. So here's my question. Does the Securities and Futures Commission have the power to invoke the provisions I mentioned? Has it used the law? If not, why not? At the same press conference, the SFC said even if the grace period ends tomorrow, scams will continue. This may be true, but the remark sounds very passive. It's defeatist. It does not show the SFC is trying to enforce effective regulation. This emboldens scammers and discourages the public and leads the public to question the competence of the SFC. Let's look at the Hunex timeline. We will see where the SFC fell short. As early as the end of September, the SFC got a complaint. It took a month for the completion, and then on November 1st, Hunex was put on the SFC's alert list. If it weren't because a press conference later, the public wouldn't have known about this scam. Why wait till September to start the investigation? At a meeting, a panel on financial affairs, the SFC told us they have been watching the suspicious activities of Hong Kong's cryptocurrency platforms. There are different ways, media reports, exchanges with the industry, and ongoing surveillance of social media posts, and also exchanging intelligence with government departments. This incident shows the SFC lacks the network to monitor suspicious platforms. It's only after complaints and investigations that a suspicious platform gets put on the alert list. That's too late. And it's a perfect storm. Putting a website on then the alert list is not enough. On this alert list, there are 2,840 platforms. This highlights the severity of the issue. And then the scam that followed shows the alert list online does little, and it's a waste of time. The SFC needs to batten down the hatches. The moment it sees a suspicious platform, it needs to go high profile and let the media and the public know so that we can all be on our guard. So submit. Mr. Gary Chen. Thank you, President. In recent years, we are seeing more and more telecom and cyber scams. The losses are also growing. Police figures shows in the first 3 quarters this year, they have exceeded the previous annual figure. In 2022, the 2022 figure shows a 40% rise from the 2021 figure. People came to me for help about scams. I'm concerned about the government's efforts to tackle telecom scams. And here are also some ideas from me. Scammers are everywhere. The government on its own cannot stamp such scams. We must work with other parties to clamp down on the criminal syndicate. The government has worked with the banking and information technology sectors to make it harder for criminals to commit crimes. The police have rolled out the Scam Meter Plus. It has set up the Anti-Deception Alliance with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority and the banking industry. There are other options open to the government. Scammers' tactics are constantly evolving. WhatsApp is an example. Scammers hijack WhatsApp accounts and then commit fraud. The numbers are also surging. The government needs to approach developers of mobile apps and work with them. The government needs to ask them to enhance app security to better protect the account information of app users. The government is already working with mobile network operators. We need to stem telecom scams at source. We need to make it an international effort. Working with international operators can ease the workload for our law enforcement agencies, and that can also work better. Our country's public security department worked with Myanmar they took out a number of criminal syndicates in northern Myanmar. In 2022, our country's PSB detected 464,000 scam cases. A sizable portion of it happened in northern Myanmar. A success in combating such syndicates can help curb such telecom scams. So here in Hong Kong, our law enforcement and financial regulators should tackle telecom scams at source by working with international partners. We have a well-established financial sector. In fighting anti-money laundering and tracking funding, we are experienced in these areas. Our intelligence can help us cut off the funding for the crime syndicate and find out where the money is coming from and going to. Cyber scams and telecom scams are having spillover effects, smuggling, money laundering, etc. The government needs to take steps to tackle such scams and punish the culprit. I support the motion and the amendment.
Dr. So Chung-wing, President. In recent years, cyber fraud crimes has become the trend, and they are committed in an organized manner. A lot of people fall victim and lost a lot of money. Earlier, the Hong Kong police said that an 80-year-old lady lost a huge amount of money, and she therefore owed great debt. Also, there was another case involving $27 million. In 2022, $4.8 billion were involved in fraud crimes in Hong Kong. This year, Hong Kong police have received over 3,000 online fraud crimes involving billions of dollars. The figures are stunning. Therefore, I speak in support of Dr. Johnny Ng's motion as well as other members' amendments. I noticed that Hong Kong police have rolled out a lot of measures to combat such crimes, including setting up hotline services and intercept phone scams, as well as hyperlinks. Also, the Scam Meter Plus app was rolled out. The police also set up the Anti-Deception Coordination Center and the Fraud and Money Laundering Intelligence Task Force. Also, it has intercepted over 21,000 stooge accounts. It shows that a lot of measures to combat cyber fraud crimes are implemented by the police. I suggest that a greater coordinated efforts be made by the government to prevent as well as combat cyber fraud crimes. First, the government should set up a cross-boundary collaboration mechanism targeting cyber fraud crimes. Most of the masterminds of crime syndicates, they are based online. I suggest that the police can work with the mainland authorities. The police can establish cross-boundary mechanism to step up information exchange as well as enforcement efforts. Also, the police should work harder to apprehend the masterminds behind the scenes and freeze their assets. The police should cut off the chain of crimes. The government should also regulate the flow of illicit funds. Secondly, an anti-deception education system should be set up. We are seeing an industry chain set up by syndicates. The funds can be moved quickly to different accounts. It's hard to trace the scammed money. I understand the police has done a lot of work, but for victims of these scams, if they cannot get the money back, that's useless. When we see new modus operandi, we have to take a preventive approach. That's the most effective. The government should roll out educational short videos to teach the public how to identify criminals or suspects. Once there are victims that fall prey into the frauds, the police should ask the victims to come forward and disclose the details of the case. For elderly people as well as young people, there are the high-risk groups in terms of falling prey into cyber frauds. I suggest that the government hold more seminars. Once culprits are arrested, the government should make public the penalties to create a deterrent effect. President, I so submit. Mr. Kisanyang. President,